Welcome to Inform TV. I'm Alan Repke, Alexandria, Minnesota. Today we're going to take a little tour with the Wheat Council in North Dakota. We stopped there in Fargo on the 24th of July to give you folks just a little understanding of how your food is always at the grocery store. People are working to see that we have a safe supply of food, that we meet the demand of the American people plus people that need food from us around the world. I think you'll find it interesting. It's nothing flashy about it, but that type of thing. But we'll show you some route maps a little bit that they do on an annual basis. The maps you're seeing are just on the eastern side of North Dakota, western Minnesota, and northern South Dakota. But I think it gives you a little insight of why every time you go to the grocery store, there's food there. A lot of people are making sure it happens. Enjoy this tour. I think you'll find it interesting, especially if you have students in your home. Make sure they watch it to get an understanding of how the food industry in America is always striving to see that what you want will be there when you want it.
First, I'd like to thank everybody here at NCI for having us here for this meeting. It's always a pleasure to come here and be comfortable, and I'd like to have Mark, who's been on the tour with us all week, to kind of tell us about this place and what's being done and introduce us to some of the people that are here.
Okay. First time, for those of you first time here, raise your hands. Okay, so quite a number of you have not been here before. The NCI was established in 1983 by the four state wheat commissions, North and South Dakota, Minnesota, and Montana, saw the need to educate buyers and to discuss with them the outstanding characteristics of the wheat grown in this region. So some of the leadership got together and formed the Northern Crops Institute and got some state appropriations from the state legislatures of North and South Dakota, and then also some monies from the state of Minnesota. So the NCI is basically a learning center where we bring foreign trade teams here for coursework. We have a staff of a number of food scientists who teach our customers the various crop quality characteristics of the crops that we grow here in the region, and so we do that through a combination of lecture and demonstrations in our laboratories upstairs. Through the years, the Institute has evolved into extensive work in all the crops. So we provide a lot of services not only for the wheat industry, but as well as the soybean, corn, the pulse industry, the barley industry. To date, we've had visitors from about 130 countries that have come to spend time with us here at the Crop Institute. We've got a staff of 11 people. We have a feed mill also. Kim Koch is our director of the feed mill. The feed mill is located out on the north side of the campus by the airport. We provide the feed for the experiment station, and then we also do various courses in various aspects of feed manufacturing. Just a couple more things about the NCI. Like I said, we're a partnership of our four states through state monies, and then the commodity groups, and of course the wheat commissions have been outstanding supporters here of the NCI. They provide a lot of the funding for the programs that we do here, along with the various soybean councils, the corn council, the barley council, all provide funds. We also get funding through the services that we provide. We provide processing services and analytical support in the lab, as well as technical consulting. So we bring in some revenues from those programs as well. And one of the things, we're a separate and distinct state agency, separate from NDSU, even though we're physically located on the campus here. We rely a great deal on the expert staff here at North Dakota State University, as well as the USDA. We've got Linda here, who just joined USDA as the director of the labs here. We've got Jay, Alyssa. Who else we got? Kelly, where's Kelly? Kelly right here. Am I missing anybody here? Well, anyway, we're really privileged to work with them, as well as the folks from NDSU provide a lot of the the expertise here to provide lectures and demonstrations in the laboratory. So that's just a little bit of an overview. And Brian, thanks for giving us a chance, and want to welcome you all here again and welcome you back next year. And I think you all agree it's a great trip, and I'm looking forward to many more with all of you. So.
Okay, as our custom's been all week, let's introduce each other again one more time. I'm Brian Walker, Ardent Mills, Minneapolis.
Dave Katsky, General Mills, Minneapolis.
Okay.
I'm J.O., USDA Wheat Quality here.
Linda Dykes, USDA Wheat Quality Lab here.
Living Joe from Thomson Reuters in Chicago.
Alan Repke, Inform TV, Alexandria.
Ben Hancock, Wheat Quality Council, Brighton, Colorado.
ND, Kellogg Company, Battle Creek, Michigan.
Chris Falmer, CWB, Winnipeg.
Kellen McMonigal, NDSU Plant Science.
Chip Levine, ADM Milling, Kansas City.
Tess Springsing, ADM Milling, Kansas City.
Estelle Signor, Bay State Milling, Winona, Minnesota.
Alyssa Hicks, USDA Wheat Quality Lab, Fargo.
Colin Waters, Montana Wheat and Barley Committee.
Mark Weinraub, Reuters, Chicago.
Sean Campbell, U.S. Wheat Associates, Portland.
Toru Kawasaki, Sumitomo Corporation, Tokyo, Japan.
Georgette Robinson, Ardent Mills, Columbus, Ohio. Tammy Ross, Bay State Milling, Winona, Minnesota.
Mike Walsh, Rainbow Bakery, USA.
Steve Chivito, General Mills, Minneapolis.
Steve Jarvie, Inform TV, Alexandria, Minnesota.
Hidetoshi Okamoto from Omic, Portland.
Reed Christopherson, South Dakota Wheat Commission.
Ben Burrows, North American Millers Association, Washington, D.C.
Brett Tay with USDA's Foreign Ag Service in Washington, D.C.
Kevin Ayotte, North Dakota Mill, Grand Forks.
Andrew Soule, Foreign Ag Service, USDA, Washington, D.C.
Ed Lesher, Bimbo Bakers, USA, Horsham, Pennsylvania.
Vance Lamb, ADM Milling, Kansas City.
Tony Hedrick, CHS Hedging, St. Paul.
Dan Logsland, Executive Director, North Dakota Grain Growers Association, West Fargo.
Jay Nord, Wolverton, just across the river, Minnesota, Minnesota Wheat Growers.
Dan Hendrickson, Colfax Farmers Elevator, Colfax, North Dakota.
Jim Bam, producer, New Salem, North Dakota, also on the Wheat Commission.
Renee Greenwald, Kellogg Company, Battle Creek, Michigan.
Jennifer Schmatz, Rich Products, Buffalo, New York.
Paul Draki, Central Life Sciences out of Greeley, Colorado.
Terry Selleck, Bay State Milling Company out of Winona, Minnesota.
Ian Trude, Chopin Technologies, Kansas City, Kansas.
Yasuno Ito, Toyota Tsusho, Bojan.
Hi, Steve Mercer, U.S. Wheat Associates, Arlington, Virginia.
Natsuki Fujiwara, with Scientist, NCI.
Daryl Nelson, Bay State Milling Company, Winona, Minnesota. Kurt Ahrens, Gavilan, Omaha.
A couple more there, just come in.
Oh, John Wyman, North Dakota Grain Growers and producer from Hazen, North Dakota.
Harold here, Colfax Farmers Elevator, Colfax, North Dakota.
Jeff Albanese, Foreign Ag Service, USDA, Washington, D.C.
Justin Jenkins, USDA Foreign Ag Service, Washington, D.C.
Katie Meisick, I'm the markets editor from Omaha, Nebraska at DTN.
Hi, my name is Lane Kalina, General Manager of Farmers Union Oil Company at Alexandria. We have a location also in Garfield, convenience store. We deal in bulk fuels, propane. We have 2 convenience stores, a full service shop, tire department. And whenever you're coming by our location on Broadway or Garfield, we invite you to stop in and check out all the things we have to offer. We are a cooperative and we do pay dividends to our customers, and it is a true locally owned co-op where we are self-sufficient. We're owned by our members, and all dividends, anything that's made here is paid back to our customers. So stop in and check us out and buy a tank of gas.
Remember to get your tanks filled at Phoenix and Alexandria.
You're watching Inform TV, Alexandria, Minnesota.
Wanted to get to the mill for a tour, and we want to thank North Dakota again, North Dakota Mill for that. So let's get started on the reports, and purple number 1.
Down. Hurry every chance you get.
And speak nice and loud, guys.
I'll do my best. So we were in the car with Ben.
Who are you again?
I am Jennifer Schmatz with Rich Products out of Buffalo, New York. And I was with Ben and Ed and Renee. And we did a bridged purple tour. We saw the mill also. We made 4 stops. We saw 3 spring wheat and a durum. And our average calculated yield for the spring was 59.6. And our highest yield was 64.5 and our lowest 55.3. And last year, that route, they averaged 62.6. A lot of flowering stage wheat. Looks like it's at least 45 days out till harvest, but it did look good. And the durum, we calculated 31, and we eyeballed it at 45. It looked really good. So that was it.
Hard wheat was also young and still had milk around its lips.
Did you get that? Green number 2, Terry.
Forgot he was here.
I'm Mark Weinrod with Reuters in Chicago, and I was riding with Terry, who's our driver, and Mark Weber and Cole, who had the lead. We had 10 stops, all spring wheat, average at 51, high of 71.8, and a low of 30. That compares to 39.6 last year. Everything looked really good. Our first couple fields were still pretty young, but as we headed south, things got more mature. Everything was in really good shape. There was a couple weeds, and that was about it. So it looked like a lot of the crop we've seen on the first 2 days, but not as immature as yesterday. Yesterday was the least mature that we saw.
Okay, next we have the ones that had to get up and go the furthest. That's the yellow route number 3.
I am Tim Bothine with ADM Milling. We drove the yellow route today, made a total of 9 stops, average calculated yield 47.7, which was compared to last year at 46.0. The highest yield we tested was 58.0, the lowest being 35.0. Generally speaking, as we moved east along the route, the fields were a little bit less mature and yield started to taper off and then pick back up as we moved south through the valley into Minnesota. For the most part, we calculated or eyeballed that it was probably at least 4 to 6 weeks away from harvest, again being the least mature wheat that we saw. Our highest yield was in or near Langdon in Cavalier County, and the lowest in Donaldson and Marshall County.
Very wet.
Yeah, throughout the valley, very wet. We had to, in order to get into a lot of fields, we had to jump over a lot of water in ditches.
Disease? Any disease?
We didn't notice any. Very clean. Thanks.
Out south of that is Orange. Kellysburg, number 4.
Hi, I am Katie from DTN out of Omaha, and I got to take the wonderful orange route today with Kelly and Dan and Kurt. And we made 4 stops today, but really if you count how many times we stopped our car, it was more like 7. We had some adventures along the way. Our average yield was 44.4 bushels per acre. We kind of eyeballed everything right around 50, with our highest yield at 53.3 and our lowest at 38.2. The highest was near Lakota and the lowest was near Crystal, North Dakota. Last year our route averaged 41.9, so it was a little bit higher than last year. We still think it's about 6 weeks out from harvest. Most of what we saw was just flowering to the end of the flowering stage. We stopped at one field we thought was spring wheat, turned out to be barley. And we stopped once to look at the soybeans and ended up talking to the farmer of that field for a little bit. But the highlight was a nice long visit to the Columbia Grain facility in Crystal, North Dakota. They took us on a tour and we got to see the shuttle loader. It was pretty cool. That's what we did today.
Colin Waters, Montana Wheat and Barley Committee. We did the pink route, so we basically had a straightforward Grand Forks down to Fargo. We did get into Minnesota just a little bit. We actually didn't stop at any fields. We just went to Buffalo Wild Wings, but the crop looked fantastic from there. No, I'm totally kidding. So we did make 7 stops, and our estimated yield average was 52, with a high of 62 and a low of 41, all spring wheat. Last year's estimated yield was 48, so substantially higher, but the thing is that this is, I mean, all that we saw was really, really immature. A lot of standing water. It's, I think it's what everybody saw today. So anyway, that's about it.
For the entire tour, we've got a total number of fields of 403, with 48 average. Am I looking at that right? Yep. 48 average, and then spring wheat at 48.6, and that compares to last year at 44.9. So, is that a record?
It is a record.
That's a record projection for us on this tour. Durham at 36.6 versus 41.7 last year. Winter wheat 44 bushel versus 53.5 last year. So overall, that's a pretty big jump on spring wheat. It's just about 3.5 bushel. That's quite a jump. 48.6. That's a record. You guys got it all done. So.
Ben, can you go over your chart there a little bit? Chart. Can you do that?
Oh, I can't, but he can.
Can you, sir, kind of tell us what you've had for other years, so people start on that end?
I think it's tour average. The light blue is USDA's August number, and then the dark blue is USDA's final. I'm pretty honest with that year. 11 was the time quite a ways from harvest. We're going to really young at 11 too.
Yeah, they were quite a ways apart.
So it's a potential.
Hi, my name's Andy, and I'm here from Rappers, and I'd like to invite you all to August 1st. We're going to be doing a party in the streets downtown Alexandria to complete the first phase of construction. We're going to have kids zone, bouncy houses on block 400. 500 block, we're going to be doing a band. Nasty Habit will be playing from 7 to 11. We're going to be, Rappers will be sponsoring a beer garden, and there'll be food vendors from all the other various stores downtown here. And the Vintage Car Club will also be in town on the 600 block. So August 1st, save the date, and come on down and check out downtown Alexandria.
You're watching Inform TV, Alexandria, Minnesota. Ben, go ahead and introduce yourself and give my audience Inform TV a little idea of what you've been doing the last 3 days and your organization, following the quality of wheat, whether it's in hard wheat country here in the Dakotas, Minnesota, Canada, the hard wheats in hard winter wheats, as well as soft winter wheats.
Okay, well, I'm Ben Hancock. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Wheat Quality Council. I actually live in Brighton, Colorado. I've lived in South Dakota my whole life till a year ago. We moved the office to Brighton. There's just myself and my wife part-time, so we have the office in our home. We did a 3-day wheat tour in almost all of the wheat counties in North Dakota, the western tier of counties in Minnesota, and the northern tier of counties in South Dakota. That's what goes into the mix for the spring wheat tour numbers that we just put out a little bit ago. We had 50-some people on the tour this year. We have had as many as 70 or a little over 70 at times. The map that we saw earlier is only a half of the map. We start the first night in Fargo, have a training session for everybody so they know what they're supposed to do the next day. We had 15 carloads of people, minivans for the most part. We sent them out starting Tuesday morning. They made stops all over the southern third of North Dakota, clear out to almost to the western border. And then we meet together every night, and we have dinner together. We give the car reports. We hand out the assignments, and we give scramble the people in the car so they ride with somebody different tomorrow. And the second day we went from Bismarck to Devil's Lake. Some cars went clear up into the oil patch country, even north of the oil patch country, almost to the Montana border, which is very long days. And got back to Devil's Lake last night and had a pasta feed at the Knights of Columbus Hall with 100 or so people. A bunch of farmers came in. We had a flour milling group come in from King Arthur Flour and baking group, I mean. But so we had about 100 people there eating pasta last night, and we scrambled the cars again today, and we took people on a bunch of people. Half the crowd went to the North Dakota Mill, which is the only state-owned mill in the USA. And it's the biggest one mill in the USA, and they gave all 27 of those people a tour of the flour mill, which is just about unheard of with the terrorist things that are going on in almost every other flour mill. You can't get in them nowadays, but it's a state-owned mill, so they do those kind of things, and they gave us all a cap and fed us donuts, and it's a great tour. Now we do the same similar thing in the hard winter wheat area in early May, first week in May, and we have a few more people, typically 20 more.
And give us a little description of that area, the hard winter wheat area.
Well, the hard winter wheat area runs from Texas clear up to the middle of South Dakota, you might say, is the real winter wheat area. There's some winter wheat planted up here and some in northern South Dakota.
And that's hard red winter wheat.
Hard red winter. There is some hard white winter, but you can't tell the difference until it's ripened in the combine. You can't tell it out in the field. So the tour we do down there is in Kansas for the most part. We got the same kind of a situation, the same kind of a map. We got 6 different routes running all over Kansas. One route actually goes up takes the southern tier of Nebraska counties. One route takes the northern tier of Oklahoma counties. And then we have a group from Colorado that does a 2-day tour in Colorado and meets us out in western Kansas at Colby, Kansas, and gives us a report of what they found. So we cover a lot of the hard winter wheat area. It's just physically impossible to cover it all. I mean, you have to stay 2 weeks. So we did that in early May, and we found probably the poorest crop we've found in a long, long time. You know, they've had terrible drought issues down there, and Oklahoma's horrible, and Texas is equally as bad, and Kansas not much better. Southeast Colorado is bad. Northeast Colorado is pretty good. So we got some good wheat there. Nebraska, I understand, is harvesting now. They're cutting 40, 50 bushel wheat a lot of places. They've started in southern South Dakota. They're running from 50 to 80 bushels. So as we come north in the winter wheat region, it's obviously got a whole lot better. But it can't make up for all the loss that happened in the state of Kansas and Oklahoma, 2 huge wheat producing states. So I don't know where all the numbers are coming from that everybody says are down there, but I didn't see them. So, on to what the Wheat Quality Council really does.
Before you get that, even though it's not your expertise, you also have a Wheat Quality Council that tours the soft wheat area. And can you explain that a little bit to our people?
There might be a couple of soft wheat tours. It's such a physically large area. It covers everything east of the Mississippi River.
That's what I'm getting at.
And so we can't cover that. It's impossible to cover it all. So what happens in the soft wheat region, some milling company like Manel Milling or Seymour Milling or somebody in Ohio or Indiana or Illinois gets a group together and tours an area probably covering 200 miles that circles their milling headquarters where they would be sourcing their wheat from. And they have some of their customers go along, and they do a similar type thing. They go out in the fields and try to calculate the yield and look for diseases, estimate harvest dates, all of those same kind of things that we do. But the Wheat Quality Council does not physically run those. Those are done by private milling companies and individuals that have an interest in that area.
Okay, and then before I let you go on what you want to present additionally, just so my audience understands it, the general public, from a yield standpoint, am I right when I say if things are all going well, the highest yield will come out of the soft wheats will the second highest yield come off the spring wheats, and will the third be hard red winter, and then the lowest be the amber, what I want to say, Durham wheat, excuse me.
I think that's probably right. I think the hard spring wheats typically, at least since I've been doing this, they've been slightly higher than what the hard winter wheats are. You know, a lot of it depends on what happens in Kansas.
And I'm going to let you back because you're doing great, Ben. But I just want, from a standpoint of here, my audience to understand from the fact that the wheat crop being late in this area and got some very positive potential with yield. Obviously, though, if August turns red hot with a late crop, it probably could make a big reduction in spring wheat yields yet, right?
We've got the most immature wheat crop probably we've seen in North Dakota and the spring wheat region for quite a few years. A lot of this wheat is just flowering, which means it's 6 weeks to harvest or some close to that. A lot of bad things can happen in 6 weeks, so the wheat is not in the bin yet, but the potential is there for a record crop.
Of spring wheat, hardwood spring wheat.
Hard red spring wheat.
Which also goes way up into Canada, even though you guys don't go up there.
Right. They got the same kind of wheat in Canada, basically. They're all Canadian varieties, except the few that they've smuggled over the border with from North Dakota.
Sure.
But typically they would be harvesting in late August, mid-August.
Right, and that's what I was getting at from my audience. And from a standpoint of, can you give a little rundown on the 4 types of wheat we talked, what they would be used for, and then tell us about your organization. You're doing wonderful.
Sure. The hard winter wheats in the south and the hard white winters, most of them are hard reds, but they're used basically for white pan bread.
Okay.
And that's the most popular thing that's been with the hard red wheat, winter wheats. The hard red spring wheats are typically used for specialty breads. They use it, it's a higher protein, higher gluten strength typically. They use it for blending with other wheats to make products they couldn't make out of the other ones. And it's the biggest class of wheats that's shipped to Japan. The Japanese are in love with hard red spring wheat and they're willing to pay extra for it. So it's supposedly the Cadillac of wheats. Now, some years the winter wheats will perform as equally as well in the bakery as the spring wheats do, but not always. So the soft red wheats in the eastern soft wheat region are typically used for cookies, crackers, pastries, those kinds of things. The Durham wheats that are grown mostly in North Dakota, a little bit in Montana, are used to make pasta. So that's what the 4 wheats that we look at are used for.
And so when you mentioned you guys were having pasta, you're actually using the Durham wheat, but as far as a percentage of the total wheat market, it's very small, right?
Very small. It's getting smaller.
Okay.
Durham has issues with diseases that the spring wheats and the winter wheats don't have. You know, you can't have black flecks in your yellow pasta, you know. So if it gets diseases, that's why the Durham area has moved from Carrington, North Dakota, in the middle of the state, clear to the western border and into Montana, where it's a drier climate. They don't get near as many diseases. The Durham doesn't yield as much, but it's typically worth a little more money. So, but the Durham production is going down, down, down in North Dakota.
And is it moving into Canada then too as well, or is their production going up? Or obviously we got a lot of pasta eaters out there, Ben.
Yeah, well, it's growing rapidly in the California desert where they irrigate it.
In Arizona.
In Arizona and California.
Okay.
So that they grow desert Durham, and a lot of that gets exported.
And that yields down there are probably 2 or 3 times higher than they are in this region?
Probably 3 times.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So they get a huge yield because it's all irrigated.
And then before we talk about the Wheat Quality Council and anything else you want to mention, from a standpoint, tell us about the white winter wheat that's raised in the Kansas, Oklahoma area. What is that being used in? And then when there's some white wheat also in the Washington State area, isn't it? Yeah. Can you give us a little update and then talk about your organization?
The hard white wheats that are grown in Kansas and eastern Colorado and western Nebraska are used also for white pan breads, but they are a white bran instead of red on the outside, so they don't have to take the red bran off. They grind the whole kernel, so now you have whole wheat white flour, and kids can't tell that it's whole wheat. So they will eat that, and Conagra, which is now going to be Ardent Mills, but Conagra has made a killing on this, selling it first to Sara Lee, who makes the soft and white you find in the grocery stores. So it's got a pretty significant market, but it's all grown under contract.
Okay.
And the wheat that's grown in the Pacific Northwest is a soft white wheat, and it's similar to the soft reds, but a lot of it is exported. It's even softer and lower protein than the reds in the East. So a lot of it goes to Japan and Korea and other places for sponge cakes and things like that we don't make much of in this country, but it's really a soft variety.
I'm Ken Newman. I'm the owner of the Depot Express. We're out here sitting on our beautiful bar deck.
The Depot Express awaits your arrival in downtown Alexandria. And when you brought that up, as far as the wheat, when we get a year when, say, spring wheat from this region of the country is blended with the hard wheats, give the audience a little idea about, from a standpoint of the dough quality and what you were referencing. I can't think of the term right offhand, as far as the stretchability or the rise. Yeah. Give us a little idea there.
As I said before, the hard winter wheats typically have a little lower protein and a little lower protein quality. And now it's not all protein. Sometimes it's not all equal. The spring wheats have typically higher protein quality, which has more gluten in it, and that's the part that makes the bread, the holes in the bread.
Okay.
And it's stretchable and elastic, and so in the hard winter wheat region, sometimes they have to add gluten to the bread to make it perform the way they would like to, but in years when they've got a lot of protein in the spring wheat region, they just blend the two together and use that instead of gluten. It's a lot cheaper.
Okay.
Gluten is pretty expensive.
The other thing I want you to touch on a little bit, I popped my camera on finally on my shoulder, and hopefully everything's coming through. There was a very impressive group of companies and people here today. Explain why they're here and your relationship with them and how they contact you with your group.
Well, a lot of these companies are milling and baking and grain trading companies, and they know that that this wheat that's being harvested right now and the ones that were being harvested in Kansas and Oklahoma a month ago are going to arrive at their flour mills and their bakeries in the next few months. And they come out here and they want to get a snapshot in time of what kind of quality they might be getting. They're looking for what kind of diseases do we have to deal with if we get it in the flour. You know, what is the yield going to be? Are we going to have a big crop or a small crop? They're trying to anticipate when to buy the wheat. So they come out here and take a tour for 2.5 days, and they can learn more here than they could listening to every ag report in the world.
Exactly. That's what I was getting at, Ben. You did a good job of explaining that. And from a standpoint, when you had a plate of pasta and a beer or two, what's their kind of feeling with the crop, with the problems in the Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas region? And in my understanding, the soft wheat areas east of the Mississippi, they had a big crop this year of yield, and then obviously we got a late crop coming here. Well, what is their thought? Are they going to be thinking they're going to be doing some blending or that type of thing?
Well, when some of these mills are so adept at creativity that they can blend almost anything. I mean, you can blend spring wheat with the soft wheat and make decent bread.
Okay.
So it depends on what the price is of each of those classes of wheat, what they blend together. What they got to blend together is whatever their bakery customer wants. And they'll do whatever it takes to sell that flour to that bakery customer, whether it's Bimbo or whether it's going to some cereal company like General Mills or Kellogg's or whether it's whoever the customer is. They'll blend that thing to their standards. So I'm not even knowledgeable enough to know what all they do with that.
That was my point. You know, the consumer today is looking at ingredients, but when it comes to bread, basically on the label it just says wheat, right? It doesn't say hard wheat or soft. So I mean, they do have some pretty big flexibility, so people won't necessarily be eating hard red winter or spring wheat. They don't classify on a label, do they?
No, it just says wheat flour.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. Tell us a little bit about your organization. You've been very kind, or you have to catch a plane. Well, you just kind of...
I got to take people to the airport.
Okay, but you're doing great. Kind of, if you have to go, kind of give us a wrap up a little bit about your organization.
Okay. What the Wheat Quality Council really does, and that our main focus is we test all the upcoming wheat varieties for milling and baking quality before they get released to farmers to grow. So it takes about 10 or 12 years to breed a new wheat variety. And about year 8, the breeders, whether they're public or private, universities or private, have about 3 bushel of flour they can spare. They send that to the Wheat Quality Council. I don't do any of the work. I just raise the money and administer it all, make sure it all gets done in a timely fashion. But the hard winter wheats go to Manhattan, Kansas, and are milled there. The flour is shipped out to 15 or 16 companies who actually make a loaf of bread. And the same thing happens in the spring wheat region. It's all milled in Fargo at the ARS lab, hooked right onto this building right here. And they do the same thing. Basically, they're the same cooperators. They send the spring wheat samples out. They bake them, evaluate what they like and don't like. The soft wheats are the same, except they just make different products. They're milled in Worcester, Ohio, and sent out to cooperators who then make cookies or crackers or cakes or whatever they're going to make out of the soft wheats. Once a year, we come together, all of us, in Kansas City for the Wheat Quality Council annual meeting, and sitting at the table up front are 15 cooperators, and sitting in the audience are the breeders and a whole bunch of other folks, and those folks up front tell us what they like or didn't like about each of those varieties. They're not even varieties yet for the most part. They're a numbered line, and they haven't been released yet. So what we're trying to do is guide wheat breeders down the path of what the millers and bakers need. Now, we understand right off the get-go, the first thing, it has to yield. It doesn't matter how good it is, quality-wise. If it doesn't yield, the farmer's not going to plant it, because he gets paid on yield. He doesn't get paid on how good a loaf of bread it's going to make. So it has to yield. They know that. They basically know what they have before they put them in the test. But we go over them, and sometimes you got to have a thick skin to be a wheat breeder. I mean, somebody might not like this thing you've been working on for 10, 12 years.
Exactly.
We do the same thing in the spring wheats, and they make a loaf of bread also. And then soft wheats, they make the other products. And we're all at this one meeting. It's the biggest conglomeration of who's who in the wheat industry you could ever imagine. And they evaluate all these lines of wheat. We don't actually print a book. We put them all online nowadays, so we don't have to kill 6 trees to do it. So, but it's a big program. Our budget is not very large, but there's virtually millions of dollars of donated time and effort from all of these companies. Somebody calculated once it was around $3 million, and our budget's like $250,000. So the big contribution comes from the milling and baking companies who are testing these products.
We will have some farmers obviously watching this program as well, Ben, and they'll say, well, they get paid by the bushel, but historically, at least probably since about 1970s, 80s, when they started bringing protein out to the local elevator testers and that type of thing, and pay more for higher protein compared to lower protein. Explain an example of a line on protein content, and if it's hard red winter wheat that may be in that 11, and yet spring wheat in this area may get up to 17, even 18, I think, if I remember right. Why will the miller pay more for that higher protein? Maybe give us a little thought on that, please.
Well, the reason you pay more for higher protein is it has that gluten in it.
And explain gluten.
Well, it's if you took a handful of wheat and chewed it up, what you got left in the middle is a little gum ball.
Yes.
And that is the gluten. That puts the strength to rise in a loaf of bread. So they pay more for higher proteins, and typically they blend them down, or they buy lower proteins and blend them up They do more blending than you can ever imagine to make all these products that people want. Now, sometimes there's a protein, most of the time there's a protein premium on spring wheats. Not always. Depends on what happens down south. Now, this year they've got not much wheat in the south, but it's pretty high protein for winter wheat.
Okay.
So the spring wheat, my guesstimate is that, and I have no way to know this, but my guesstimate is that this spring wheat crop that we're looking at right now is going to be lower in protein. Typically when you get tremendous yields, there hadn't been enough nitrogen fertilizer put on out there to produce that much protein in that plant. And it hasn't been stressed. It needs to be stressed a little bit to drive the protein up, and there's been no stress on this. Now, it could get hot and dry in the next 2 weeks, and we could see a tremendous protein crop here. But I'm guessing, if I had to bet on this, I bet it's a little lower protein than he would like. There probably won't be any protein premiums. The protein premiums may come in Kansas or Oklahoma or Nebraska or someplace. But that's typical what happens. You can't tell it though till you combine it and put it in a bake lab and test it and see what happens.
And just from a global standpoint, you know, we've the farmers have enjoyed high corn prices and high wheat prices, soybean, that type of thing. It's my understanding from a global standpoint, they had a huge crop this year, so overall the American crop is down. Is that a fair statement, you think?
Yeah, I think so. You know, they say that the Black Sea region has a huge crop. It's not the greatest quality in the world. You know, most of that won't make a loaf of bread. The countries that are buying that stuff are making something, for the most part, besides bread. They're making porridge, or I don't know what they're doing with it. But if you wanted to make a loaf of bread, you better import some U.S. wheat, some Canadian wheat, or some Australian wheat and blend it together. And that's what happens.
Okay.
They do that. They blend it together and make the products they want.
You've been more than kind to Inform TV, and we really appreciate it. You want to give a little more of an explanation of your group or some closing thoughts, and we'll let you go. You've been very kind, Ben.
Well, only closing thoughts I would say about the Wheat Quality Council in itself is that we're the only organization in the U.S. that does this. For instance, in Canada, it's government done, it's government regulated. They tell them what varieties they can release and which ones they can't release. This is a free country. You can release any variety you want, but if the industry has evaluated it through the Wheat Quality Council and they didn't like it very much, the chances are you're not going to sell a lot of seed. So typically they don't release something that nobody likes.
And with just that's a good ending thought, but you guys also stopped and talked to some farmers, you said, and some elevators, and you got the mill here. Was there any spin as far as what the freight car situation in North Dakota? It seems like it's a real problem. Yeah.
Everybody's talking about that, you know, and what the farmers that talked last night in Devil's Lake said, you know, they don't think it's going to end anytime soon.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Oil's outbidding the track, I suppose. So,
yeah.
Ben, thanks a lot for talking to Inform TV. I really appreciate
All right,
it.
thank you.
You're watching Inform TV, Alexandria, Minnesota.